What's going on, folks? This is John Kelly, Minister of Engagement here at Catalyst. We're really excited to have you guys here for the Lunchtime Livestream. Just getting ready to start here just a few minutes with Rob. But before we do that, just want to real quick throw some announcements out there to you. Community group signups have started, and you can sign up online, or you can contact David Kibler to more info. You can sign up also live at church. So if you're interested in getting involved in community groups, you can do that. Also, today is the last day to sign up for the Indestructible Marriage Ministry Kickoff that we're doing here at Catalyst. This is called Indestructible Marriage. It's Saturday at 10 a.m. from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. It's $25 a couple, $15 online. And if you're going to need childcare, you'll need to sign your kids up, $5 a kid. After 2 kids, you don't have to pay any more for it. I think that's a pretty cool deal. We'll be having some delicious lunch served during that as well. So make sure you're here for that. I'm going to go ahead and bring in Rob. Actually, before I bring in Rob, there's one other thing. For some of you who watch this every week, you're still sheltering in place, and you haven't been to church on Sunday mornings, and chances are you haven't been involved in a community group. If you're interested in being a part of an online community group, please contact me and let me know. Dave and I right now are trying to figure out how to make that happen for folks that are still staying home right now but want to be part of a community group. Please contact me. Let me know about that so that I can get you involved and plugged in on that. Now let's add to the stream my good friend, Mr. Rob Harlemert. How's it going, man?
How's it going?
Man, I can't be much better. I really
Okay.
can't. I mean, my knee is healing up, dude.
That's good.
I actually got out of my house today for the first time in a few weeks.
Well,
It's
let's
like-
continue that trend.
Yeah, no joke. It's kind of like quarantine, but not because I have to quarantine. It's kind of awful. So can I brag on my wife? Is that cool with you? You mind if I brag on my wife?
Yep.
So my wife, and I'm not doing this because there's a marriage conference coming up on Saturday. I actually really like to brag on my wife. I just enjoy it tremendously. But my wife over the last 3 weeks has basically just been a rock star, like taking care of stuff around the house, doing stuff I haven't been able to do up until now. And she's been awesome. And she doesn't get enough credit publicly. So I'm basically letting the whole world know that my wife is a rock star wife, and all of you guys should be jealous of me. But in all seriousness, today we're getting ready to talk about Dave's sermon from Sunday, The Case for Courage. Great topic for right now, don't you think?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's needed. I think it was I really enjoyed his sermon. I went up and told him afterwards. I enjoyed it so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah,
So it was
I
good.
thought,
I'm glad that he talked about this.
yeah, and I loved the main thing, and I think this is really, I really of all, like, we don't usually go, wow, I really love the main thing, but I really loved the main thing this week.
Yeah.
It's not enough to respect courage; we must live with courage. And I ask you this every week, so I'm going to ask you this week: when you read that on the screen right now, what does that make you think of?
It makes me think of people who just sit back and say, "Man, I wish I could do that,"
Yeah.
instead of going and doing it. And that's what I remember. That's what I thought of immediately. Is we're going to talk to the people who always wanted to do something but never actually step in and do it, because they're missing out on that huge blessing of whatever it is in life. So we must live with that courage. We can't just sit back and be like, "Oh, it's really cool that they did that."
Yeah, I think of, I think of Gladiator, and I
Okay,
think of Braveheart, and I think of Luke Skywalker.
Luke Skywalker. Yeah, okay.
I basically think of all these movie heroes that, like, really, the Avengers. You know, the people who are, you watch these movies, and they do these unbelievably huge things, and they put their lives on the line with no worry about losing their lives, but they really want to. They want to do something that's going to go beyond themselves.
Yeah,
And so when he read that, I thought, man, how many of us are like that person that's sitting on the couch
yeah,
watching that movie, being highly impressed by this amazing thing that these
yeah.
people are doing, but not having the guts to get out and do it ourselves. um,
Absolutely.
my wife's already chimed in, thanks babe, you're welcome. And then her Aunt Denise, whoop whoop, go Rhea, go Rhea. So got a very family vibe going on right now.
It's good. I like it.
But in Joshua 1:9, we read, "Have I not commanded you, be strong and courageous? Do not be afraid, do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go."
Yes.
Um, what does that verse say to you, Rob?
Well, I always think of the story first whenever I read that, and thinking about Joshua and his new challenge of walking these people into the promised land and directing them, and his two biggest supporters and biggest people he looked up to in his life are not with him anymore. I mean, it was
Right.
like an immediate thing, and God gives him this command and encouragement to, don't be discouraged that you don't have people around you that you loved and that you looked up to. It's your turn to go, and I'm going to be with you. That's what I think of, and I'm looking forward to talking about this scripture, because there's a lot of people, I think, that are scared to take that next step in their life because they don't have that safety net of the two people in their life or the one person in their life anymore. And they're like, I don't know what I'm going to do next. But us as Christians, we have this holy being, this creator that has been with us from day one. And we really need to lean into that. We really do.
This makes me think of any of those cartoons where you see, gosh, let me think. I think The Lion King was one of them, where Simba goes to this land where there's all these bones and dead animals and stuff, and the hyenas are coming after him. And he roars, and they make fun of him. And then he goes to roar again, and all of a sudden, standing behind him is his dad.
Yep.
Yeah. And he, even after that, his thought process, Simba's thought process. We're talking about cartoons right now. I know that it goes somewhere. I
It's
promise.
good.
But
It's
but
good.
Simba it goes after that, and he hasn't lost any courage. Why? Because he knows his dad is behind him.
Yep.
And you see these cartoons and TV shows where somebody comes up and they say something and they're not afraid. Why are they not afraid? Because they have this huge person behind them, or they have this uh, really strong individual that's
Yeah.
backing them up, or you know whatever it is, that I really think of that. I think of when we go into situations, we're not just going into situations. Standing there right behind us is God.
Yeah, I
And
agree.
he's kind of like, let's go.
Yeah,
There's nothing to fear. When he even says it in the verse, he says, the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go.
yeah.
Wherever you go. We got a couple comments coming in. We got, yes, be courageous. For me, I struggle with my heart being broken. So along with that, I have questions which call more issues. So yeah, I create more than necessary. And then somebody said, the elephant graveyard. Yes, the elephant graveyard. That would be, yes. You're saying it much more elegantly than I did. But let's go to the next question here. And I want to ask this of everybody that's tuned in right now and that's listening or watching. Why are we not courageous? After that verse, after reading that verse and knowing that God is with us when we go into situations, why are we still not courageous in situations? Rob, what do you think holds us back?
The fear of loss, I think, is the biggest one. I think it's the fear of what. Oh, nice.
We're going to talk about it later, but since you're talking about it, we'll just go ahead and pull that up right now.
No,
No, that's all
we were
good,
going
man.
to talk
That's
about
great.
that.
No, that's great.
Yeah, the fear of the unknown, which I think for me more, or whenever me and my wife talk, it's always the fear of loss, in some sort of fashion. There's some other things now that I remember the list that we're going to go through. I'm not going to mention them because I want other people to mention them. But I would say for me is the fear of loss. And making it, whenever you get to a certain point, you're like, okay, I could go this next step, but I might lose my current position. Like if I fail, I will not go back to where I am now. I might go further back. Is a huge struggle for a lot of people.
Yeah. Laura Baxter actually just added something in that's really good. She said, he's already provided everything we're going to need. He tells us to be strong because he's behind us, but can also see past that first step.
Correct.
That's a really good perspective on that. It's a really good perspective on that. Another person said that the fear of the unknown is a big one for them. And so let's just talk about fear, because I think, and I know like, the thing that is at constant battle with courage is fear.
Yeah.
And I guess the question is, where does fear come from? Why do we fear? I look at my kids, especially Jack. Jack probably bruises, breaks. Well, he hasn't broken anything yet.
Yeah.
I say yet because I just don't trust that he's not going to do this at some point. But the kid runs into things, falls off of things, jumps off of things. He literally has no fear for his own well-being. And he really doesn't see anything. He doesn't feel like he has anything to lose. So why not just do it?
Yeah, absolutely.
My thought is, and you can tell me if I'm wrong on this. We got a few more here. Fear of failure. The what ifs always hold us back. I know I put on, I'm not afraid of anything, but I just don't want to show the vulnerability of my heart. I think a lot of people are like that.
That's good.
But to get back to what I was saying, I really feel like we think we have things to lose. And I say we think we have things to lose, but the truth is we don't really have a lot to lose. I'm a real believer that when we show courage, when we step away from our fear and allow ourselves to do what we're supposed to do, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but it changes how we think. Because each time we take a step in courage, it makes the next step in courage easier. And then that makes the next one easier. I think about, hiking's a thing for me. Everybody who knows me knows this. I love go backpacking. It's why right now I'm injured because of a backpacking trip. But I remember my first hike with, I think it was Tim Hertak and Brian Seagraves. And we were told, Brian and I were by Tim, that we were going to hike 3.2 miles. And it was a moderately easy hike. 6.9 miles later, I'm dragging my feet.
Yeah.
I'm in pain. Brian's dragging his feet. He's in pain. Of course, Tim, who was in way better shape, just was fine. at the end of the hike. Now, 6.9 miles now is not a big deal, but back then it was huge. Had I been like, okay, that was really hard, I'm not going to do it again, I wouldn't have done any of the things that I've done in the last several years. But I realized that's the first step. And I made it. I'm okay. Like, yeah, I'm tired, but I'm okay. When we make decisions and that out of courage, yeah, it might be hard. There might be some blowback from it, but you're gonna be okay.
Yeah.
You just got to make the next step. My mindset lately has been, we got this. I got this. Spelunking is my go-to. Oh, nice. We got a caving person in here. I like that. So let me ask the question to the rest of you guys today. What has fear kept you from doing in your lifetime? What is something that you didn't do at some point? It could be anything. It could be small. It could be big. It could be spiritual. It could be physical. It could be whatever. But what is something that fear has kept you from doing in your lifetime?
I lost you for a second, John. Can you
you're good.
Can you repeat that?
Yeah. What has fear kept you from doing in your lifetime?
Me personally, or are you asking everybody?
I'm asking everybody, but I'd like to hear yours.
Okay. Fear. I think I can think of a couple things that I had fear originally. I've surpassed those, but I do think that I missed out on earlier advancement in certain things if I would have jumped on it earlier. So the first thing was photography. I think I waited probably 2 years or longer, too long to start that. That would have greatly benefited our family and my relationships with people in the church if I would have jumped on that earlier. And just different. I've met so many cool people, and I've grown relationships with people in the church that I've taken photos of. I've gotten to know their kids better, which has been awesome. And I've had some cool opportunities to evangelize and share what I do for a living, which is not photography, to people outside of the church. And I feel like I missed out on a couple of years of that. I think the other thing was church planting preparation. I think probably God placed on my heart a lot earlier than I thought to be a church planter. And we could have been working on this probably a year earlier than we started, and would have been probably a little further along in the process of, I mean, we are very far and a lot further along than we should be in our current situation.
That's good considering you're 4 months away from starting a new church. So
no, we're longer than that. That's when
you're 4 months away from not working here anymore. Let's put it that way.
That's true. That's the
you're
thing.
You're 4 months away from not being in the office anymore and me being sad.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
but yeah, I think those are the two biggest things. Now, church planting has been very beneficial, and photography has been very beneficial. But I remember that fear of like jumping into it, especially photography, because it's like a huge financial investment right off the bat in order to buy the equipment. I mean, you went through that with video stuff. It's a big chunk of change right off the bat. Yeah. And right when you make it, it's like, okay, I have to be all in. If not, I'm out thousands of dollars.
Yeah. If not, I'm the dumbest person on the face of the planet.
Exactly. And it's been good. And I think those are the two things off the bat that I can think of that have kind of kept me back.
I know a big one for me was coming out of college and going into my first full-time youth ministry.
Okay.
And it was down to two churches. One was in Indiana. It was a church that was on the move. It was growing, but they were offering about $4,000 or $5,000 less a year to hire me.
Yeah.
And the other church had a history of beating up youth ministers. Nobody was ever happy there. Every guy I talked to said, don't go to this church. But they were paying $4,000 or $5,000 more a year. And now I will say there's been a lot of great ministry that came out of that experience.
Oh yeah.
There are a lot of students out of that ministry who are going into ministry. You're actually planning a church with one of them.
Correct.
And so God blessed that situation, but I know because of the guilt I felt when I took the job that I was making the wrong choice.
Yeah.
Um, because I made it based on money and not on where I felt like God was calling me, because I was afraid of what would happen if I didn't have the money that I need.
Yeah.
So we got this one. I'm not sure I've been held back by anything. Move my family. This has to be Adam Tipton. Move my family 450 miles. I was afraid that I made the wrong decision, but I did it. I was afraid to leave the country to go to Jamaica on a mission, but I did
Yep.
it. Yeah, that's Adam Tipton, 100%, because I was there for
Yeah.
both of those. For those who don't know, and I'm going to brag on Adam a little bit here.
You should.
When in 2007, it was January of 2007, I had a phone conversation with Adam. I said, "Hey, let's get together and talk tonight." We were accountability partners. We needed to get together. So we went to some serious gourmet Taco Bell that night and
Nice.
sat down, and I opened up to him about this church plant that David Kibler and I were going to start in Nicholasville, Kentucky. And I said, "Don't tell anyone, not even your wife." And so we talked through the whole thing. And at the end, he goes, "Okay, I'm going to call Jennifer and let her know." And I just looked at him. I was like, "Adam, we cannot tell your wife. We're not telling anybody right now." He goes, "Well, no." He goes, "You don't understand. We've already talked a long time ago. And we always said if you and David Kibler planted a church, we were going to go with you."
That's cool.
And the funny thing was, I never had a plan to plant a church with David Kibler. I actually laughed at him the first time he brought it up. And so, Adam, you want to talk about courage? We're talking a family of 6. Never lived anywhere but southeastern Wisconsin, and picked his whole family up and moved him down here.
Yeah.
And so thankful for his example on that. Renee Basham, sometimes the fear doesn't hit until it's too late, like being pregnant with a 3rd child or starting a nonprofit or committing to a triathlon. That triathlon thing is pretty bold. That's awesome.
You'll do it. I
Yeah.
believe.
For those who don't know, Renee just had her 3rd child this year during a pandemic. She started a nonprofit that helps young ladies who need help in the birthing process, and she works as a doula for them. She does some great stuff, and this year she's decided to do a triathlon because why not? I mean,
Oh,
shoot.
yeah.
It's not like life isn't crazy enough, which is pretty impressive. So let's see. It took 2 years to get over the fear of foster care. It took another year of deciding to do it again. I
Yeah.
have a huge fear of overseas missions. You're not alone. A lot of people have a huge fear of overseas missions. That's for sure. Keep those comments coming in. I love reading these from you guys
Yeah.
and seeing where you guys are. 2 Timothy 1:7 says, "For God did not give us a spirit of timidity, but a spirit of power, of love, and self-discipline." And I think a lot of times it's really, really easy to shrink back.
Yeah.
Challenge comes and we shrink back. Rob, what's your experience on that? What do you see in that with people?
Oh, man. I'm trying to think of a good example. For God did not give us the spirit of timidity, but a spirit of power, spirit of love, and a spirit of self-discipline. I think in certain situations, I love this verse because it is encouraging. It's always a verse that you can lean back on whenever you're having doubts about yourself or doubts about a current situation. I know in teachings in the past we've expressed that if you doubt yourself, why don't you lean on the things that God promises you, and lean on the things that God says about you, because those probably hold a lot more weight than your current self situation or the way that you think about yourself. For God gave us a spirit of power and a spirit of self-discipline and love. A lot of us like to shrink back in the idea that we can't do a lot of things in our life. But God says we can. He says that we can push back all these things, especially the self-discipline thing. Like, that's huge. Like, so many people
Big time.
think they can never get past something. It's like, no, God gave you the ability to do this. It's not, it doesn't, the one thing it doesn't say in there that we need to make note of is it doesn't say easy anywhere. It doesn't say quick. It doesn't say that you'll have this great people around you that are going to encourage you. Like sometimes it's going to be difficult, but in the end run, you do have the ability to push through.
Yeah. Yeah. I think back at it, I went on a mission trip directly after our honeymoon. So yes, I knew back then she had me and supported me.
Nice.
I'm thinking that's probably Alan Lunsford. I could be wrong on that. But I know that he and Ashley went to Jamaica on a mission trip, actually kind of in replace of their honeymoon, which was
That's cool.
really cool that they wanted to serve. And they're both foster parents now. And that could be Ashley too. I'm sitting here thinking,
Yeah, it could be Ashley as well.
yeah, it could be Ashley too. But just the ability to, nope, it's Julio. Look at that. Oh, that's right, because Julio got married right before
That's right.
we went down to Jamaica. Look, I love this when we don't know who it is because it's just a big guessing game for us. But it's so easy to let ourselves get defeated.
Yeah.
And growing up, I used to say there was, or I won't say growing up, I'll say since I've been in ministry, I've seen serious value in being a part of teams.
Yeah.
Whether it's an athletic team, an academic team, a show choir, a band, anything. When you're part of a team, you get a much healthier view of victory and defeat. A much healthier view of it. With the Super Bowl happening this past week, we saw a 43-year-old quarterback win a Super Bowl. But it wasn't the 43-year-old quarterback that won the Super Bowl.
No.
He won it because he had an offensive line that did their job, running backs and wide receivers that did their job, a tight end that did his job, an entire defense that did their job.
Yeah,
22 guys out on the field came together and they got it done. And with us, we have to remember, like you were saying, when the whole thing about self-discipline comes down to you aren't doing this alone. It's that thing again of, you've got Simba trying to growl at these hyenas, but his dad's right behind him, so he has nothing to be afraid of.
Yeah.
We're not in this alone. You're not the only person who's winning, and I think it's so important to do that. Well, JK made me go see Rob in Honduras. Major step for me. We know how well that turned out. Yeah, now Kevin can't get away from Honduras. Let's see, a recent Bible study, we talked about lies we believe. One of them went back to the garden when God asked Eve, who told you that? I often go back to that when I let fear creep in.
That's good.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about some of these fears a little bit. We've already talked about the fear of loss, but let's talk about the fear of failure. Why is this a fear for people?
A fear of failure?
Yes.
Well, I think it goes into the other things. So, fear of failure is a broad term, but it's what comes after the failure, I think, is what people are afraid of. So the failure can be loss of money, loss of job, a loss of friends, community. And the thing about it is those things weigh higher than the things that matter the most. So in our life, we have some things that are probably the most important things in our life. So for me, it's my relationship with Christ, my relationship with my wife, my relationship with my kids, or kid, not kids, only have one. And for some reason, when we have fear of failure, I don't like put my whole effort into thinking about the things that aren't going to leave me ever, which is my family and my relationship with Christ. And those things weigh so much higher. But for some reason, like the fear of money or fear of, I don't know, just any little thing will just completely cripple us, even though we have so many other things that are so good.
Well, and we also have a warped sense of what success is.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Exactly.
When your definition of success doesn't match God's definition of success, failure is going to happen way more often.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you can't live up to the success that the world expects you to have.
No.
Like you really can't. It's not possible. I think Instagram is one of the best examples of that. Um, we joke in the outdoor industry about how on Instagram we always post the beautiful pictures,
Yeah.
the vistas and the mountaintops and the canyons and the beautiful trees and all this stuff. But we never post that picture of us struggling to get up a hill, sweating like crazy and wanting to quit. We never we never post that picture of spending 2 hours trying to get wet wood to light on fire. We don't post the pictures of a tent that gets blown by the wind and you're dying just trying to get the thing set up. That stuff
Yep.
never gets posted because you don't want people to see that.
Yeah.
That's not what people want. They want to only see the success. And
Yeah.
so we have this fear that when we fail, that people are going to think less of us. We have this fear of when we fail, that our spouse isn't going to think the same way about us, that our
Yeah.
kids aren't going to look up to us the same. I really believe that the fear of failure is a fear of outward pressure more than it is anything else.
Yeah.
Which bleeds right into the next one, which is the fear of ridicule. You know, the fear of being made fun of, picked on, laughed at, jokes being made about you. Adam Tipton, since we were just talking about him a few minutes ago, he worked a job in Wisconsin where he was ridiculed for his faith almost daily. And I mean, literally ridiculed. It's hard because
Yeah.
it makes you not want to talk anymore. It makes you not want to share. It makes you not want to be courageous.
Yeah.
It's a pretty crippling fear.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, even in our world of ministry, it's something that or mission work. Laura is in this as well. It is or not for profit, the same thing. There's an idea of how things should go, and people just want you to stay within that lane, especially in the church world on how Sunday should go, how
Right.
your midweek stuff should go. And if you do anything outside of that, the initial reaction to some other ministers is ridicule. Like, I can't.
Mhm.
Why are they doing that? I can't believe they're doing that. That is not going to succeed.
And sometimes
Um,
within your own church.
yeah. Yes. Yeah. But I'm talking about like our peers, like people
Yeah.
that we either look up to, like other ministers in town or around the world. And I know a minister out west that is, because of pandemic stuff, and they completely changed the way they did Sundays, and they are going to do once a month Sunday gatherings, and they're switching to the other 3 weeks. They're doing like what we do, community group stuff,
Mhm.
and they did that, and it's the initial reaction. Everybody's like, "What in the world? Like, you're not going to meet on Sundays?" And he's like, "No, the church is so much bigger than that, and they've blown up because of it. They've seen so much growth, so many baptisms." But it kind of stinks that the first initial reaction to everything is just ridicule. And I think those who push past the ridicule, and believe in your calling from God, and believe in the calling of yourself, it goes back to that scripture of God is with you at all times. And what you said,
Absolutely.
John, in our vision of success, we need to hold true to what our actual success is what God believes in us and what God says about us.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you 100% on that. I know for me, like right now, I'm in a struggle spot just with okay, Josh Taylor just said something on here too. He said let me pull him up real quick, just make sure I can get him on here. He said the fear of failure at being a good enough parent to my stepchildren. That's that's a big one. It's a big one.
Yeah, that's
Um
good.
so uh, we entered into COVID as a church that we had a modest social media online presence. I mean, it was very modest. You know, we were doing okay. We weren't doing bad, but we were not engaging people online. We were not taking advantage of this amazing opportunity to do ministry like what we're doing in this moment right now.
Yeah.
And somehow God directed me into this ministry. Rob, I have no clue what I'm doing. Like, if I'm just being completely honest, Sunday mornings are just uh, we're figuring it out. Like nobody who's in our Sunday morning ministry had ever done an online worship service ever.
Correct.
None of us. None of us had ever, outside of one person who is helping out a lot, Daryl Jordan. None of the rest of us had ever used a camera crew for a Sunday morning service.
Yeah.
We'd never had to do all of these things. It was just everything has been completely new. And every Sunday when something happens, my biggest fear, and I'm just being completely honest and transparent with everybody who's listening, my biggest fear is people in the online chat are going to get irritated and start getting frustrated with me.
Yep.
Now, they may not know it's me they're frustrated with. They just know they're frustrated with the situation, which I'm frustrated by too. But there's always that fear of ridicule in that of, I have no clue what I'm doing, but I'm really trying hard to make this work for you,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it would be real easy for me to look at Rhea and say, you know what, let's go find another church. Let me go work somewhere where I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
and let me just go find let me just work in my zone,
Yeah.
and just let me go. But that's not what God wants. He wants me doing this, and I have to like push through that. And it's not always fun. I mean, there are times when I'm pulling my hair out trying to figure out what the heck is going on,
Yeah.
but we push on because God has called us to do it. Um, the last one on here is fear of death. This is a pretty extreme one. But what are some places, Rob, where the fear of death could step in?
Unfortunately, us as Americans just don't have to fear that very often. And if you have that fear in your head um, about your daily life in America, um, you passing away due to your faith, it's probably not as big as you think. Um, but I watch those like Laura Baxter, Rob Esposito, who's down in Honduras. I look at our orphanage in India and the other guys that we've had a huge blessing of meeting over the past like 5-6 years that Dave has invited over. They've spoken at Catalyst, and I watch what they post on social media about their friends passing away due to their faith and being persecuted, and it just breaks my heart watching somebody that you love die because they have so much faith and they just want to push the word of God to the ends of the earth. That's the fear I have daily, is that my friends that are over in India and Nepal are going to die
For the
because
faith.
of their faith. I don't have that fear here. Same with Laura and Rob. I always pray for them and pray that for their safety and those who travel there quite often, like Kevin Mink and his crew that he brings down quite often. And then we have our missionary in Jamaica, the same thing. Like I pray for their ministry quite often.
Yeah.
Because they go through struggles that I don't have to worry about that. We don't have to worry about that, especially living in Nicholasville. And I drive like 1.3 miles to go to work. Like I don't have to go far.
Well, I can walk in my neighborhood late at night and not have to worry about my life.
That's true. I think every single Lexington cop lives in my neighborhood. So I don't worry about anything.
Yeah. Laura Baxter said 100%. So many have a cookie cutter idea of ministry. So when God leads us in a different direction, not everyone is going to like that. But we are all so different. So ministry can't be the same across the board.
Yeah.
And that's true. That's true. When you look back at the early church, what we're doing today would have blown their mind.
Yeah. I
That
can only
we are
imagine.
getting 250 people together in public and talking openly about Jesus.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think sometimes we realize in the history of the church how good we have it right now.
Yeah.
And what we are able to do because of that. It's just crazy. I want to throw this out there. just this phrase and get your opinion on it. And if any of you that are listening or watching have an opinion on this, I'd like to hear that. But I truly believe that each decision shapes us and it shapes the perception of us by others. And let me kind of explain that. The best way I can explain this is when I think about my kids. And let's say Ellie's in school, she does something and she gets suspended. How I react to that, how I respond to that is going to affect her perception of the decision she made and the decisions she's going to make moving forward. So if I see her getting suspended and my only response is, well, listen, it was probably nothing big. We'll let it go this time. We're not going to worry about it. It's okay. Just don't do it again.
Yep.
Now, some parents say, well, yeah, that's how you should be. But understand when a kid hears that, what they're hearing is, ooh, I got away with it. So next time, I'll probably get away with it then too, because daddy doesn't want to punish me.
Yep.
Where the correct response is, you're grounded. I'm taking away this, this, and this. And I hope you learn from this.
Yep.
Because that's a decision I'm going to make. And I have to have the courage to make that decision with my kid, knowing that they're going to be miserable, unhappy, mad at me. I have to deal with that, and so I really believe that each decision shapes us and it shapes the perception of us by others. I mean, what's your thoughts on that, Rob?
Yeah, I always try to, or we have this conversation often whenever we're ministering to people and we see people make decisions. I think the biggest thing that breaks my heart when I watch other people make decisions or really encouraged, it goes both ways, is whenever somebody makes a decision in their life, I immediately see either the climb that they just made or the downhill slope they just created for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I know exactly what other people are going to think about them, whether it's right or wrong. Every decision that we make is either going to make our life more difficult or easier. And we either will have a positive view from everybody or a negative view of everyone. And the hardest part in life is to decide if that people looking negative at you is okay or not, because you might make a decision in your life, leaving the current church that you're at to plant a church, like you did and Dave did. And some people probably thought negative about that. Like, I can't believe you're leaving. We're going to miss you. You probably lost a lot of friends in the process. But in reality, that was a good thing. And
Well, I think for us, it wasn't as much the leaving that caused friends to be lost. It was we had to fundraise. And so we had to go to friends and say, hey, would you be willing to financially support this church? You'd be surprised at how many people that's when they jumped off the boat and said, we're not friends, or don't ask me any more questions, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Here's a good one. I like this. This is good. This is really good, Kevin. It can also shape the other's perception of God. My buddy Damon had a tainted view of God for decades because of his relationship with his dad.
Okay.
And there's a lot of people that they've experienced that, just, as someone who people know as a Christian, if you're not courageous, you'd be surprised by the lack of respect that people will have for you. And as a result, the lack of respect they'll have for God, because if that's what Christianity is, that's weak.
Yeah.
And I've actually heard people say that before. So that's a great perspective on that. Great perspective on that, Kevin.
Yeah.
Since we're talking about perspective, Dave said perspective leads to courage. So why do you think he said that? Perspective leads to courage.
I'm trying to remember what he said in his sermon. Do you remember the illustration he used for this?
I do know that he used the scripture James 4:13-7 says, "Now listen, you who say today or tomorrow we will go this way or go to this or that city, spend a year there, carry on business and make money.
Okay.
Why do you not even know what will happen tomorrow? What is
Yeah.
your life? You are a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes.
Okay. I
Instead, you
remember.
ought to
Yeah.
say,
Yeah.
if it's the Lord's will, we will live and do this or that. As it is, you boast in your arrogant schemes. All such boasting is evil. If anyone then knows the good they ought to do and doesn't do it, it's sin for them."
Yeah. I, yes. Okay. So if your perspective in that current situation, we don't know what tomorrow brings. We
Right.
don't even know if we will be blessed with another day on this earth.
Mhm.
Our time on this earth could end today, and if we live our life according to that, um, you can have a lot more courage. You can have a lot more courage with the idea, kind of like a bucket list thing. Like if you had a huge bucket list of all these different things you wanted to do before you passed away, if you knew that your last day was tomorrow, you probably would have a lot more courage in your life.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like you would probably want to complete a lot of those things. And I think this just reminded me of this year. I think a lot of people always had the idea of, well, I might uh, the COVID-19 world, and we're always thinking, hey, we're just going to stay away from family right now because we'll get to see them later.
Mhm.
And I know a few people of talking with them that they thought, well, we're just not going to have the holidays with our families. We're not going to see them for their birthdays because we don't want to get them sick. But they actually never got the opportunity to say goodbye to their loved ones because they passed away before that time.
Yeah.
I think if we knew the end date, we would have a lot more courage. And in Scripture, um, we see that we probably should live our life as though every day is a blessing and not that tomorrow is guaranteed.
Yeah, absolutely. Really cool thing. We were talking about Ravi just a little bit ago, and Ravi's on here right now.
Absolutely.
Sent
Love
us
it.
a little heart, which is awesome. And then Julio said, "It's hard at times because I started a church and it lasted 20 months. I don't mean to discourage you, Rob. But for me, it was hard to get back into the ministry. But now we have the support of the church and the community.
Yeah.
And yeah, you can get knocked down pretty quick. You can
Yeah.
definitely get knocked down pretty quick. Here's a phrase that I want to throw out there that I think is a major crutch to courage. And that's the phrase, someone else will do it. Um, you may be right. Somebody might do it, but God put you in that position at that point to do it. And if our perspective is, we don't know what tomorrow brings, this is life or death. And here's the thing about this, like, we're not talking about stuff that's getting you a good deal on a new used car, or we're going to get you great insurance for your health insurance. We're talking eternal things here.
Yeah.
And so when God presents us with that moment, that critical moment where he's calling us to do something, he's doing that because it's eternal.
Yeah.
It has something to it, and we can't just live on that someone else will do it mindset. We
Yeah.
need to realize when God put us there, that means he wants us to be doing this right now. I mean, what do you think about that?
Yeah. I agree. I don't know if I agree that if you fail that somebody else wouldn't do it. I would hope that if it was within God's will and I failed, that He would find somebody else to make sure it happened, because He's bigger than me.
Mhm,
But God gives you opportunities to do it, and He wants you to be successful.
mhm,
He's banking on the fact that we as humans are going to spread the word of Jesus to the ends of the earth. He's not doing it Himself. He has called us to do it. He's called us to plant churches. He's called us to start nonprofits. He's called us to start encouraging businesses to help other people. Um, those are things that we're supposed to. I mean, there's so many more. I mean, foster care, like taking care of other people. He's called us to do it,
mhm.
and we need to make sure that we're doing it.
Yeah,
Um,
I love what Renee said here. Said bystander syndrome. The more people around, the less likely to help someone in distress.
yes,
And that's true. That's really true, and it happens a lot. Happens a lot, and I think it happens. And I can say in Catalyst, one of the things I love about Catalyst, and I was actually on a podcast last week, and I got to brag on our church a little bit. And one of the things I was bragging on was when we do um, deliveries for Thanksgiving meals and when we do Christmas presents for families and things like that. If you don't get up there quick enough, you can't get signed up for it.
Yep.
And that's one of my favorite things about Catalyst is we have people that anxiously want to serve. Um, and uh, I'll put this out here. Courageous people aren't people who don't feel fear. Courageous people are those who feel fear and keep going anyway. Uh, I don't know a single human being on the planet that hasn't felt fear. I think that's a pretty common thing for many of us. Um, but it's just the idea of getting in there and just getting it done.
Yeah.
Got something in here. Saw. Wow. Saw. I wonder if that's the movie. Fear happens when you focus your belief on lies. Things will not work out. This is impossible when you put your faith in God. He's in control and wants more than the best for you. Yeah. Great. Renee Basham, for many years ago, I worked in an office and there was a clerk who was the lowest on the totem pole. He left a project that had been handed to him for 2 weeks. When I asked him about it as his semi-supervisor, he said, "I'll just leave it for someone else to do it." I said, "You don't get it. You are the someone else." And I think of God saying that to us. Yes.
Yeah.
100% on that. I know God's will in the ministry He wants for my family and I, which I didn't want before. Now I'm super stoked about what He has in store for us. Kevin Mink says, God already knows our faults and shortcomings way before He ever calls us. So if He calls us to something, we have to trust He'll equip us for the calling. Yes, 100%. And then finally, Rhiannon's on here. Says, I think about this a lot with my foster kids. If I'm not there for them, where will they be? I'm in a tough parent season right now, but I have to be there for these girls because God called me to take them and to love them.
Yep.
Yeah. And sometimes that calling is really, really hard. It's just really, really hard.
Yeah.
I want to go on. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I love what Dave talked about. And you mentioned it earlier about how if you make that first step, it becomes easier to make the next and next step. And I mentioned it in my sermon, and Dave has mentioned it in the past. It's talking about what God has given you, and you need to stay faithful to it. For other people, you're like, man, I can't believe God is calling you to do that because that's so difficult. But what a lot of people don't see is how many other steps they took in their life of being faithful to God to get to that point of this massive thing that God gave them to be faithful. And I think about like people that do foster care and especially like Rhiannon's situation where she was faithful with the one foster kid and then God blesses them with 2 more foster kids. You all stayed faithful to what God gave you and He blesses you with even more. Because he believes that you are the right person to take care of these kids. I think about the Allens the same way. How many different foster kids have gone through their household because they're staying faithful and God is blessing them with more that they need to be faithful to.
Yeah. And, even in ministry, we see people in our church where they start out as a volunteer doing something like maybe just greeting people, but they're faithful to it and they grow and then we move them to something else and they move into something else. Even on staff, everyone on our staff has moved into different things, different seasons because God has equipped us to do it. We got to do it. That's what we need to do. So I'm going to throw this statement out here real quick. Just kind of get your opinion on. We'll read a few comments after this, but there's a difference between courage and trying to prove something. And I think that's a big statement right now with what's going on. I'm going to go ahead and read a few comments and we'll come back to that. David Kibler, I used to hear, you're not that important. God has 1,000 people lined up if you don't do it. I disagree. I believe that there's a role for you and you only. And if you don't do it, it will remain undone. Don't wait for something to happen. Show your faith in Christ of your will Christ has for you yourself. It will pass you by. And then love my church, but got to go. But thank you, Rob and JK. Well, thank you, whoever you are. Let's go back to that statement again. there's a difference between courage and trying to prove something. There is one thing that has happened in the last 20 years that, well, maybe it's not 20, maybe let's say 15 years. And that is the keyboard warrior. That is the person who they have tons of courage only because you never actually see them. You have people who they will say anything, do anything as long as they remain anonymous. Um, I also see people making decisions, calling it courage, but it's just stubbornness. I'll use myself as an example. I hiked Kilimanjaro in 2016. It was one of the most courageous things I've ever done because it's 19,000 feet. It was the hardest work to get ready for that. It was the last day. We had unseasonably cold weather, negative 30-degree wind chill with 30-mile-an-hour winds. Just miserable for several hours that day of hiking. As I was hiking up, my nose started to bleed. And it would have been really easy for me to say, this is dangerous. I need to stop. I need to quit. Well, I realized real quick it was just a like surface where I'd rub my nose with my glove and it started bleeding. It wasn't anything major. So I decided I'm going to keep going. Now fast forward to 2021, January of 2021, I go backpacking with Josh Mannon. We go out to the Red River Gorge. I jump off a small boulder, jack my knee up, and out of stubbornness, I decide I'm going to finish out the day and hike out another 7 miles and then hike out 2.5 miles the next day, where I could have gone 2 miles back to my car and probably protected my body a little bit and been smart. There was no courage in that moment. That was just stubbornness and trying to prove a point that I was tough. There is a difference between the two. Have you ever seen people struggle with this, Rob?
Yeah, all the time. I've struggled with it before. There's always that breaking point. And sometimes, like your story, you had courage to continue, or you had courage up to the point where you need to make a decision.
Right.
And sometimes it takes courage to stop, or stubbornness to continue.
Right.
Which is probably, I would say, probably is what most people experience in their life. Is they're at a crossing point, and one is stubbornness and trying to prove a point, and then one is, it probably takes a little courage to be the bigger person and be like, maybe we should stop doing this. Maybe I should stop doing this. And I think I see that. I see that in friendships, trying to prove a point. I see that in ministry. Of even though everybody says you probably should go this way, you're like, no,
Yeah.
I'm going to do what everybody else says not to, and continue. We've all done that.
Yep.
Luckily, mine haven't been overly too big that nobody has noticed most of them in my career so far. Luckily, I have wise people around me that have my back, and we all have each other's back. But in life, I love what Renee says. And,
yeah, I'm pulling this
if you
up
could
right
pull
now.
that up real quick. This is what I think of is the difference, where one is me and one is, it takes an outside power most of the time to go through.
Yeah, if you're just driving and you're listening right now, Renee said, trying to prove something seems to rely more on yourself. I can do this.
Mhm.
Courage relies on something or someone else. And Kevin Mink, here's another one. 2016, I was afraid to ask for help and ended up in a down spiral. Since then, I've learned asking for help is sometimes the most courageous thing I can do. Gosh, 100%, guys.
Yep.
100%. We're starting to run out of time, and I know people are getting ready to go back to work from lunch. So just want to throw 2 more things in here, and they're actually from last week's sermon, which really goes well with what we talked about this week, and that is our worth is found in Jesus, not what you can independently produce. That goes right along with what Renee was saying.
Yeah.
Our courage should come from our worth that is found in Christ, not from our worth that we find in ourselves. And then finally, don't quit. Don't quit.
Yes.
Have the courage to continue. I know Dave has preached this since the day we started Catalyst, was always to continue. Even when everybody else around you says it's crazy, don't do it. Continue. And great advice. Something that we really need to remember. Rob, do you have anything else you want to share before we get ready to wrap things up here?
Nope. I'm just really looking forward to. I know this was a one-off sermon. It wasn't a part of a series, but next week's series start is something that we're really passionate about, and I cannot wait.
Yes,
I
it's
cannot
all
wait
about
to,
discipleship.
I know. I can't wait to hear what Dave has to say, and I can't wait for people to have conversations about it. I'm really pumped about that.
Absolutely, man. Well, thanks for being on today.
I'll see you guys later.
Talk to you later, buddy. All right, so real quick, I just want to throw some stuff to you guys just so you know what's going on. As I said earlier, community groups have started up as far as the signups go. So if you need to sign up, you can do that online at catalystchristian.net or in person on Sundays. If you need more information, please contact David Kibler about that. And if you are somebody who is sheltering in place right now, and you have been for a while, and you have no plans, at least for a while, to be back out doing things in public, please contact me. We are interested in starting an online community group. And if that's something that would interest you, please contact me so that we can let you know about that. Also, today is the last day to sign up for the Indestructible Marriage Conference that's going on here at the church. That's something that we've been planning for a while. It's this Saturday from 10 to 2. It's $25 a couple in person. If you're going to be watching it online, it's only $15, and childcare is $5 a kid. But after 2 kids, you don't have to spend any more money. So just a few quick announcements there for you so that you guys can see all of that. And with that said, have a great rest of the week, and we'll see you guys on